The first thing to do is just clean the outside of the lens. I'm using naphtha here, just to clean the mount of the lens itself, to remove oil and grease and other contaminants. Try not getting anywhere on the glass at all. You can see the amount of dirt that came off. Looking at this rear lens group here, where the screw that holds the rear component together is fitted, there's a tiny little indentation next to it. Like somebody had 2 goes at drilling the hole for that thread. Interesting. Never mind, that's not going to cause us any problem. Cleaning the glass, I'm just using normal domestic glass cleaner, not Mermaid's Tears or anything else. And angling the lens to the window here, I can judge by the reflections whether it's clean, whether there are any smears on the glass that I still need to deal with. And typically I would use, in a fairly clean lens like this, 1 cotton bud per surface. And if it's a dirty lens, you'd need more. Rotate the cotton bud as you work, so that you're presenting a fresh face to the lens at all times. That's good. And that may save you doing something awful like picking up a fragment of grit and working it into all across the lens. That's our rear group done. Our front group. Just clean the inside surface. That looks pretty clean. The front group's likely to be fairly clean, because people can get at it and remove it and clean it. The rear group less so. I'll just give this a quick wipe with this one and then start with a fresh one, because that front surface is quite dirty. Now always work like this. You apply your glass cleaner to the cotton bud. Don't spray it on the lens. Don't dribble it on the lens. You don't want any running fluids on the lens. Because if you do, you can be rest assured it'll run down round the edges and get between the glass elements, and you won't be able to get it out short of major dismantling. Just checking this again by reflection, the window light beside me. You can see a little mark there. Looks a bit like a smear. I'll see if it goes away. Sometimes you'll get marks in the coating where it's been damaged, rubbed on something perhaps. Usually they're not going to cause you any problems in terms of function, but they can look a bit ugly. Yes, certainly. Depending on the angle I've got this, I can see more or less. There's a tiny mark on the front group there, front surface. It's a tiny, tiny scratch. Right, that clicks into place. That's my shutter assembly done. I think I want to deal the rangefinder next. And if I do the rangefinder and then the top cover, and then I think a fairly rapid reassembly of the camera after that. Here's my rangefinder. This looks fairly good. The front lens here is quite dirty. The front surface silvered mirror there looks quite good. The semi-silvered mirror here is a bit hazy looking. Most of that's on the front surface. I can deal with that. Now, better have this apart. I have a tool here for getting to that surface, getting that pin screw loose. Now I can run it loose with my tweezers now. A bit of rust there I can see. Yeah, a bit of sand and stuff here too. This is all a bit grimy. Pop those to one side. That little wavy washers, a little bit of surface rust on that. That rear lens I want out of that lens element there for the eyepiece. So a single screw holds that at the back. I'm holding this in my fingers as I undo this because I do not want to pop it down on the front and load up these sections by pressing on them. That rear eyepiece isn't too bad in terms of grubbiness. This piece here is the piece that holds the frame lines for the finder. So I take that off. This has our frame lines for the standard, wide and tele lens. There's a couple of spacing shims there which I'll just remove because otherwise they'll get lost. That's ready to go in the cleaner now. I'll clean that in the ultrasonic cleaner. Now, I don't give it very long. I usually give it about 3 minutes and no more. This front surface here of the semi-silvered mirror, I can clean that. That's just plain glass. The silvering's on the other face. I don't want to touch the silvering on the other face because chances are I'll clean it right off. It's very delicate, which is why I don't want to clean it in the ultrasonic cleaner any longer than I need to. But this surface I can clean, and so I will. Because this is also the grimiest surface. So by cleaning this manually first, it means that I've only got to clean it in the ultrasonic cleaner long enough to remove any haze on this silvered surface on the inside, which is lesser. And since I don't want to have it in the ultrasonic cleaner any longer than I need to, that's all to the good. So I'll just wipe away this grease here and marks on that frame so that I'm not spreading any grease into the water that I'm using to in the ultrasonic cleaner. This piece, I've got to clean the frame of that with some naphtha. This will be all old lubricant and dust and rubbish, so I'll just get all that off there. And the glass, I'll clean the glass cleaner. Now this is just glass, it's not a semi-silvered mirror or anything like that, so you can clean it with glass cleaner without any problem. And it's not a taking lens with delicate coatings or something else, so you can be more energetic in cleaning it. Normally I find it best to clean the outside surface first because I can see the reflections on that easily and judge how clean it is. and that makes it easier to judge how clean you've got the inside surface, which is quite concave. And trying to judge how clean you've got a concave surface is very difficult, judging by reflections, because you can't really see. The eyepiece glass here is plano-convex. One surface is virtually flat, that's to the outside. One surface is convex, that's to the inside. Muck it up and it won't work right. Like the front lens on the finder, this is just glass. You can be fairly, you can give it a robust cleaning, it won't mind. That's good, and I'll just clean that finely before I put it together. A few other bits here I want to clean. These are dirty. This is the bush and this retaining screw and that wavy washer. I want to get all the filth off this first. That's quite oily. And the brass bush is quite dirty too. There was a bit of sand or grit in this part. I'm just checking this wavy washer. That surface is good. I thought I saw rust on there. Perhaps I didn't. Perhaps it was just dirty dirt I was seeing on there. Yeah, that's good. That'll be fine. So, off to the ultrasonic cleaner. Back in 5 minutes. Right, well that's back from the cleaner and I'm back from lunch. So, let's start putting a few things together. Now there are a pair of shim washers underneath that set of frames, or the frames for our various lenses. In case anyone is tempted to speed the process up by cleaning something like this in the ultrasonic cleaner without taking the frames out, don't do that because you'll end up in deep trouble. Basically the frames are just on a piece of film for all practical purposes, and if you run it through the ultrasonic cleaner, the gelatin will simply start coming apart and the frames will no longer be there, or they'll no longer be complete, and you wouldn't want to have to be painting them back manually. It's a bother and a nuisance. Any clear part on that frame shows as bright line in the finder. You do not want to have to repair it to any great extent. It can be. Occasionally I've struck them where there are 2 or 3 fractures in the gelatin, showing us bright lines in the finder, unwanted extra frame lines in odd places. And it is possible to paint them out, but you have to do it with the end of a toothpick, and you have to do it in individual drops of paint or you're going nowhere. I'm just trying to clean that glass and get it lying in place, and it's not going very well. I'm going to have to clean the inside surface first and then put it in place. I can see dust on it, that's my problem. But if I clean the inside surface, put that in place, cleaning the outside surface is a doddle by comparison. Here we go, got this gold. The retainer, held in by a single screw. Fat fingers in the way so you can't see anything. There we have it. Now the arm. So, starting here, the glass is all clean, so that's ready to race. Wipe of molybdenum paste around the centre of the hole in the arm that the bush sits in. Now normally I like to mark that bush prior to disassembly so I can get it back in exactly the same place. I'm not doing that today because it came out all by itself in a very helpful fashion. Just gave that a wipe of molybdenum paste on the underside, and I need to put a wipe up the side there where the return spring runs in that groove. Now I've got to get this in position and hold it against spring tension. I'm on camera just. Put a touch of molybdenum paste around the side of the bush there at the top. Take my wavy washer, take my retaining screw, using a pair of heavier tweezers, run that screw in, check that the retaining washer's not, the spring washer's not trapped underneath or anything stupid. Do that up, check that the action is free, peer out of the window and see what you see. Vertical alignment, very good. Horizontal alignment, good enough to go with because I'll make final adjustments on the camera. So we've got our rangefinder done, we've got our shutter done. This exposure meter, well, it's quite dusty on the outside, so first thing I want to do is brush off that loose dust. Looking at the state of the plastic window on the top, that's in quite good order, certainly sufficiently so that I do not want to make it worse by doing anything silly. I want to get that clip off there and clean this piece. And to get the clip off, really I want to push that off out of the way, and this should do it. Alright, just push that back a bit, or of course it immediately dropped back into place. See if I can get a screwdriver down into that slot. Let's try again. That's better. Take that clip off. Lift this off. It's tight, I don't know why. I only think something's burred over a bit. Right, now here I want to clean the top of that meter housing to get rid of that old grease, and you can see that this is like a grinding paste. That's grease and dust and grit. And it acts like a grinding paste. It does not make for a smooth operation. Get that off there. Same on the underside of this. And the top side. and in that groove there. And that's quite important because that groove operates against this piece which swings the lever across. Now looking at that lever, it's a bit reluctant to return to its home base. It's alright if you let it snap back, but if you let it back very slowly it might not. It means there's a bit of stiffness at the joint here. I've got to assess that and see if I need to do anything about that. There's a bit of rubbing going on there. Something's rubbing. It might be this pin rubbing against the housing at that point. Let's pull it across a bit and see if it makes a difference. It could be the pointer rubbing on the underside of this housing. That can happen when the top of the camera's had a thump and the housing gets folded down effectively, pushed downwards at this point. It tends to buckle the housing so you end up with a low point here, and then this will rub on it. I'm trying to assess what the situation is here. Let's put this back on and check how smoothly it rotates. Now it's clean. That seems to work very smoothly. I'm quite happy with the state of that. Right, so having decided that that is okay, I'll run some molybdenum paste around this cam surface, run some around the centre, pop this back in place, make sure that that pin is not tucked underneath. That's better. That's nice, it's very smooth in its action. Take its spring clip, its circlip, its E clip, C clip, put that back in place. That's good. Happy with that. The plastic lens on the top of that, don't go mad cleaning that. It's fairly soft plastic, it scratches easily. So clean it gently, and if the marks on there are obviously scratches that you're not going to get off by cleaning, don't start rubbing at them, you'll just make a mess. Alright, well that's quite good. I'd say that meter can go back on. Now selenium meters of this age, sadly, there's not a particularly high likelihood that they're going to be accurate or reliable. It's nice to have one on the camera that looks like it works. The top cover. So I'm going to clean this now. There's a bit of sand and rubbish in here. That shoe is not the original shoe. That's been replaced. I would say that shoe has come off a much later camera. Possibly a reflex. Maybe a Auto 3, something like that. Maybe. So we'll get that off there. I've got to clean all this up. Get rid of that sand. The glass here I can slide out. You can see that's a bit dirty. The edge is all nibbled off that glass. It's not uncommon for the glass to be like that. That one's in better condition, but it's very dirty. So the top cover I've got to clean with some naphtha. I'll start at the end here. That's very dirty around here, around the rewind knob. I'm not sure why that should be. It's quite greasy. There's a lot of sand there. I've got to get the grease out before I start. The sand just won't blow away if it's stuck there with grease. It's very dirty around that glass lens, or where that lens was, where the viewfinder lens was there. This plate you can't remove this. This is all riveted together. So there's a limit to how much you can disassemble this. So you need to be cautious and not bugger up things like little windows like that by getting something on them you should have kept well away. Now we know the camera had hit the ground. The base of the camera had certainly hit the ground because of the damage on the chrome trim. The top cover appears to be in quite good order by comparison. Which is good, because it's the top part that people see. Trying to get these down into the crevices here, because there's dirt down there, and it'll, after I put the glass back in place, almost inevitably that dirt will, because of its greasy nature, will wait for a good hot day and then it'll ooze its way out onto the glass and be visible again. Got to get that as clean as I possibly can. Again, that's down at this rewind end of the camera where there's an unusual amount of grease. So usually you don't get any inside the top cover there. That looks good. I'm just checking the action of the frame counter. It seems to move smoothly enough. I'll clean that with some naphtha. So there's a fair bit of dirt coming off there, nothing spectacular. Sometimes with cameras you'll find that there'll be one patch of the dial that's quite faded or even corroded, and it means that the camera is probably sat in one position for a long time, and even or possibly something spilt on it at that point, and the camera sat there for a long time. Just cleaning here, and the frame counter mechanism underneath. I'll get rid of that old grease if I can, because it's got all dust and grit on it. There's more sand there. That's looking better. I'm just checking the action of that frame counter, trying to determine whether it's smooth all the way around or whether there's a tight spot somewhere. If you get a bit of grit or something underneath it, it can cause you problems.